What is going on, Lake Pro Tackle fam? I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today's video, we're going to be talking about our favorite utility bait cast rods. Now, I've got Adam behind the camera right now. We're going to be switching out. We've got a nice lower priced rod moving into a mid-priced and then all the way up into the upper echelon of rods. Of course, you can check them all out online at lakeprotackle.com. You know, starting it off for me, this is the Abu Garcia Veritas rod. This is going to be specifically the 7'1" medium fast action rod. This thing here comes in right under $100. For $100, you're getting a very light rod. It's going to use the PowerLux 100 blank. This is a very sensitive blank, and what's wonderful about it is it comes with everything that you really need. It's got a little bait holder. It's got a great handle system where you can have full access to the blank on the very bottom. Like I said, it's going to be extremely sensitive. It's going to get the job done when it comes to throwing your spinner baits, your Texas rigs. You can even throw braid on this if you want. You can throw some top water here and there. Now, of course, you're probably wondering about the rating for your line as well as lures. This one is rated for 1/8 to 3/8. Now, I definitely can say 100% you can throw ½ ounce all the way moving into maybe 5/8 territory if you're throwing treble hook baits. I would not be setting the hook on a 3/4 ounce jig with this, but I would definitely be throwing something like a 110 whopper plopper, throw a bigger popper, a spook even, ranging into that 1/2 ounce, right? So, you know, for $100, I mean, specifically right now, $99.95. So under $100, the new Abu Garcia Veritas is my #1 pick.
All right, guys. So starting out on the kind of mid-price point here, I'm not going to say this is a cheap rod, but at $200, we're stepping up to where you're really starting to get into some super light rods that are very sensitive and will just do anything you want them to do. So my first pick is going to be the Daiwa Kage series power jerkbait rod here. This rod is a 6'10" medium. It is rated 3/8 to 3/4 ounce, 8 to 20 line. It has a air sensor 2 reel seat in a beautiful red color here. SVF Nano Plus and X45 on the blank. This rod is a little bit shorter than some of the utility rods we would show. You know, traditionally a utility rod, you're going to be talking in that 7 foot, but I really like this one. It's parabolic enough that you could throw small cranks, jerk baits. You could even step up to probably like a DT6. I don't know if I'd go too much deeper than a DT6 into an 8 or a 10 footer. It doesn't necessarily have the backbone for that. But jerk baits, moving baits, it's got enough backbone to it. If you wanted to throw like a small shaky head with kind of a thin gauge wire hook on like a, you know, a 4-inch grande bass rattlesnake, or like a smaller bottom contact presentation, or even, you know, power shot, you could do that kind of stuff with it. I wouldn't say, you know, if you get in excess of a ½ ounce, this rod's not going to have the beef. But if you wanted a universal rod on that lower end of the weight spectrum, we'll say for like 3/8 of an ounce, you know, moving bait stuff, you could definitely get away with a chatterbait, light spinner bait, all of that kind of stuff. I think this would be a great option for you. Again, air sensor 2 reel seat, beautiful cork on this stuff. If you're a cork guy like I am, can't recommend it enough. So my first pick here is going to be the powered jerk bait in the Kage line.
Yeah, it's also going to be an in-store only, or you can call into the shop and we can set you up. All right, now moving up into the mid-tier. Of course, mid-tier is all subjective, but of these three, this is going to be the middle of the pack. This is the Miller Rods Cast Freak. Now, this rod here is a 7 foot, medium heavy. The rating specifically on it is going to be 1/4 all the way up to 1 ounce. Now, one thing with the Miller rods is that their rating system is going to be a very wide spectrum. These rod blanks are extremely, extremely strong, and they have a lot of guides on them. The Miller specifically tend to have anywhere from 11 to 13 guides, which is around 2 or 3 more than your typical rod. Compared to the Veritas, it's going to have 3 more extra guides moving down the blank in a very similar fashion. Now, the line rating is going to be 10 to 20 pound for fluorocarbon or mono, and then anywhere from 15 to 30 pounds for braided line. Of course, since this is a medium heavy, You don't want to throw extremely heavy braid. You're probably not going to be punching with it in super dense vegetation. But of course, if you do that, that's a little bit more specific. We're trying to play into the utility factor. This rod uses the G-clutch reel seat, which is very unique. You see this on a couple loose rods, and it's very, not exclusive, but it's one of those technologies that the Miller rods use to really lighten up the rod. And all these Miller rods, I'm talking extremely light. One thing I wish that they could change a little bit is the camo on it. Maybe go to like a gray camo, a black camo. The blue, very unique, it stands out, so I know why they did that. But when it comes to the utilityness of this rod, you can throw almost anything on it. It's got a great parabolic bend. It's a true medium heavy. It's got a normal, moderate, fast taper to it, and it bends extremely deep into the rod, and all these guides really help funnel that line. That way you're not having the line hit the blank on any point on this rod. When you're casting it, it is extremely well balanced, so I would definitely suggest maybe anywhere from a 70 all the way up to maybe a 150 size reel, depending on which brand you're going with. But without a doubt, this is going to be one of my more favorite utility rods. This one comes in at $310. It also, one last thing here, it has a nice comfortable handle section. It's not super long and it's not super short. You can still get some good roll casts. You can do some flipping and pitching with it. So when it comes to anything you want to throw on this rod, you can definitely do it, well within the bounds of topwater, typical moving baits, typical jigs, to Texas rigs, to shaky heads. You can do a lot of techniques on it, so definitely check this one out on the website.
All right, guys, so for my second pick here, we're going to bump up in price point again, right about where Sam was just talking about with that Miller rod. These are $279?
Yeah,
$279. This is the X Pride series. This is the 7.2 medium. But for those of you that fish the X Prides, you'll know that the Spiral X setup in these has them feeling just a little bit beefier than a normal medium. I would call this a medium plus, or really bordering on medium heavy. Now with the X Pride series, the actions are going to be a little bit slower, so I would call this kind of in between a fast and moderate. It bends down deep right about to this blank, this eyelet here in the blank. This is going to be a 7.2 length rod, so we're moving out of topwater territory and moving into more moving bait territory. So, shallow cranks, mid cranks, 3/8 ounce chatterbaits. A 1/2 ounce chatterbait would probably max this rod out. But on the other side of that, if you're throwing a little heavier weight, you'll get the blank bending a little bit deeper. So if you want that kind of swing hook set on a chatterbait rather than the big kicking up over your shoulder, this might be a good option for you. Again, it is an X Pride, so we've got the monocoque handle on it here, the beautiful cork, CI4 reel seat, and the ratings on this one, once again, it is 7.2 long, 1/4 to 3/4. I probably wouldn't push it up to 3/4. I would say 1/2 ounce with a small trailer is about as big as you want to go on this. If you start getting up into 3/4, it probably would throw it, but it's going to feel over. It's not going to have the beef to carry it home if you need to swing it. 8 to 16 pound line. I probably, again, wouldn't go 16 pound on this. I would probably max out about 14 pound fluoro. You could throw 16 pound on it if you're doing some really rough rock work, like with a big square bill and stuff like that. It would probably be okay with that. But if you're looking to drag bottom with like a 1/2 ounce jig and big 16 or 18 pound fluoro, this probably wouldn't be the rod for that. I've got another option coming up here that would be better. But if you're a pond hopping guy and you wanted to grab one rod that's not super expensive but has that premium quality feel, you could take this and pair it up with something like a Metanium 7DC, a Curado 70 MGL, a Zillion, something in that kind of medium-sized reel category. A Bates Hundo would be a great option for this. This is really, I think a do-it-all rod within the realm of, you're not going to throw, a DT20 or a 10XD or anything like that on it, anything ridiculous. But if you just wanted to grab a rod to go pond hopping or bank beating and didn't want to blow the budget out of the water, this 7.2 medium here, keep in mind it's medium plus, so don't order it thinking it's going to be a super noodly medium. But this would be a great option for you guys.
All right, now moving into the top tier, my pick is going to be in the G Loomis family. This is the G Loomis NRX Plus 843C MBR. So this is the Megabass rod. I've talked about it a lot. The jig worms are great, extremely fast tips, little bit faster blanks overall. Very similar to what Adam was saying about Spiral X. The JWRs are a little bit fast for me for a utility rod, and that's why I want to go with this guy right here. Again, the 843C MBR NRX Plus, 7 foot, medium heavy, and they call it a fast action. It's still a little fast, don't get me wrong, but it is going to have a much more moderate bend all the way through the blank compared to a jig worm. A little more similar to something like the drop shot rods in the spinning selection, or even the spin jig rods that have a little more moderacy throughout the entire blank. Now with the NRX Plus, you're going to be getting a lot of amazing technology in here. Of course, you're getting the recoil guides. You can step on these suckers, they're going to bend straight back. Doesn't abrade your line at all, so don't be scared about that. Of course, I love my ceramic guides going down these first few, and then of course the tip, all using premium components. Now the MBR, this one here is going to be rated for 1/4 to 3/4. And I can say for a fact I've used 5/8 ounce on an 843 and it handled it just fine. I'm talking your bigger, like 1/2 ounce jigs with a big trailer on it. It can handle it. It's one of those blanks that I'm extremely comfortable with, really pushing it to the max of its abilities. Now for line rating, you're looking at 10 to 17 pound fluorocarbon or monofilament. It doesn't have a braid rating, but I really wouldn't push it, really push this rod to have braid. It's not gonna be a rod specifically designed for braided line just because of that. Again, it's very moderate. Don't get me wrong, you can throw anywhere from that 20, maybe even 30 pound braid to leader. Still be totally fine. It's just not going to work well within those normal techniques that we were talking about earlier. So, at 7 foot, you're going to get a decent amount of casting distance. There's another rod out there, a little bit longer, a little bit heavier power. I thought about doing that, but for most people, where I started, my grassroots, throwing my lipless crankbaits, throwing some chatterbaits, spinner baits, wacky rigs, just weightless Texas rigs, those are all going to be my utility players. If I was just to pick one, slap some 14, 15 pound line on this, I can throw everything in my tackle box that I need to. But again, if you are going out on the lake, you want to throw some deeper diving crankbaits at DT6, DT8, this rod can definitely handle it. DT10 would probably be the upper echelon of what I would do, just because that bill is pulling so much water onto this rod. Now, you're going to say, Sam, it's an NRX Plus, it's an MBR rod. This is basically your bottom contact rod. And one of the strengths about the MBRs is I feel like they excel at so many different things. I'm not going to pigeonhole this rod and say, oh, it's just a bottom contact. Don't get me wrong, NRX Plus, extremely sensitive, premium grade cork, and I also love it's a full cork handle. That's one of the biggest things to me. I love a full cork handle. It really balances the rod extremely well. You can throw anything, literally almost any reel on this under a 200 size. I haven't found a reel that I don't like on this. I do prefer a little bit lighter reel when it comes to it. Something like a Alder Baron is awesome on this for extremely light, pretty well balanced reel and rod combo. One of my favorites would have to be just Metanium MGL. Keep it extremely light. Of course, use the CI4 Plus Reel C as well as the CI4 Plus in the Metanium, and you're looking at an extremely well off, extremely light combo at that premium price point. Now, one last thing about this rod here is that it's going to be, again, that premium price. You're looking at $650. But don't be scared of that price. We've got more rods that cost way more than this rod right here. So if you're looking to get into a setup, really get into the higher end of rod categories, hit us up, give us a call. Adam, let's see your last rod.
Actually, I want to talk a little bit about this
yeah,
843 MBR because this is, in my opinion, this is the best utility rod on the market for anything you're not trying to bomb a super long cast with. They have a 903 MBR, which is going to be a little bit better for that long range stuff.
Yep.
But this rod is the rod that made me fall in love with the NRX series. This is the first $600 rod I ever bought. This is what made me fall in love with that ultra bougie, high quality gear. Whenever I bought this rod, it was a gigantic investment, to be completely honest. And my wife thought I was absolutely bonkers. However, when I got it in hand and I went and fished it, I'm telling you, this is still probably my favorite rod and my favorite rod taper of all time.
You can feel fish fart on your line.
You can
100%.
hear what color they are when they swim by it. The sensitivity of these NRX Plus rods, and specifically this 843 MBR, with how soft this tip is, I used this rod for everything. Drop shot, jigs, moving baits. I had a ton of fun fishing with this rod with a super finesse drop shot, believe it or not, with an 8-ounce weight on it, 1/8 weight.
8 ounce.
Fishing, 8, yeah, 8. 1/8 weight, fishing for gigantic bluegill. Another thing I want to say is do not be afraid of the price point on this rod for it being, frail, for it being fragile. Sam has seen how I treat my rods. I throw them in my truck. I put them in the back of the truck, the front of the truck. I had one of these rods for 5 years, and it was my daily rod. It stayed in my truck all the time. I fished it everywhere I went. Everything from crankbaits, jigs, drop shot, finesse work. I did throw DT10s on it, and I can attest it's a little bit much, but I adore this rod. I can't compliment this rod enough. If I was going to pick one do-it-all rod and I had the coin and could justify the purchase, this to me is the best utility rod on the market.
Yep. And you were talking about the 903 earlier. It's just not possible in some areas to get a 7'6" rod, especially if you're bank beating.
Yeah.
A lot of the times there's overhanging trees, there's brush around, and you can't get that full cast.
I'll say it flat out. This is the best pond fishing rod that's ever been built. It's a bold statement, but I fish a ton of ponds. I am very much that dude who sees a pond on the side of the road, and I'm like, let me fish that pond. Let me go check that out. It looks fishy. And this is the rod I would pick to go. Now, again, don't run out and spend this kind of money if you don't got it. There's other options, but if you got it, or you really want to step up to a rod that is at that ultra premium price point, and you want the one rod to put in your car or truck and do it all, I'm telling you guys, this is the one.
Well, we didn't plan on tag teaming this one, but you've got another one over here I'll hand to you. It is.
It's over here.
Oh, you already got it. There you go.
So I will give Sam this rod, and I will jump over to this one. Now, this is another rod that I'm going to rave about, because this is currently the favorite rod in my fleet. I don't have an 843 MBR anymore. I'll pick up another one at some point, but this is what I have replaced my 843 MBR with. This is a Megabass X10 Bandersnatch. Now, this rod is actually a step down in price point, but by no means a step down in overall quality or weight or sensitivity or anything like that. Obviously, you're not going to get NRX level sensitivity out of this rod, but it's pretty dang close. When you're into this level of price point, this $399 price point, you start splitting hairs, and the difference in overall sensitivity, only the bougiest guys will know. Only the guys who really, really, really spend the time on the water will tell. But this rod is going to be the Megabass X10 Bandersnatch. This is a F5 7-foot. The line rating on this is 10 to 25, and it says 3/8 to 1 ounce on the rating. So the X10 line, each model has its own particular reel seat and palm swell here. For instance, this one has I don't know if you guys can see it here, a nice little spot where your finger can contact the blank and a very short trigger. I adore this rod. This is my everyday do-it-all rod. I have one of these in the truck right now. So the cool thing about these X10 blanks is they use this recycled fiber in here, and it lends itself to the utility purpose because it makes this rod soft. Not that it doesn't have backbone, but the taper and the power of this rod, I mean, it bends all the way down. Chatterbaits, spinnerbaits, bottom contact. The tip on this rod is super, super soft, but it loads deep enough in the blank that you can do almost anything with it. Overall, I'm not exaggerating at all. This rod feels as light in hand as that NRX Plus. I don't know what the actual weight on it is, but in hand it feels like nothing. I mean, the tag makes a tangible difference in the weight of it in your hand. It's so light.
I think at the high end, you get a lot more balance out of your rods. A lot of the, I guess, less expensive options feel a little tip heavy.
Yep.
And that's because of the extra epoxy, you know, all the extra stuff put on the rods. You know, what we were talking about with NRX and Bandersnatch is they are very, very simple, but do it extremely, extremely well.
Yeah, and I'll agree. In Megabass, the way they treat this blank, it is sanded here and nice and smooth. Up here, it is unsanded and uncoated. So the blank is phenomenally light. It's not tip heavy at all. This, again, is one of those rods that if you didn't want to spend NRX money, this rod is a very second close to me. This rod's going to be at a $400 price point. So you're about 250 bucks less, but I promise you, it does not feel like you're taking a significant degradation in overall quantity. This rod has probably, in the last year for me, I'm not joking, caught 300 fish. You know, lots of those are chatterbait fish. It lends itself really well to rolling a chatterbait.
Grass piece.
Great grass piece rod. I have caught a lot of grass piece fish on it. It really lends itself to that nice kind of reel into it and turn hook set. It loads up beautifully. For me, I like this rod over a P5 Deimos. I actually tried a P5 Deimos for a while, and I prefer this rod to that Deimos for my moving bait stuff. The Deimos might edge it out a little bit on sensitivity, but this thing is no slouch. And again, if you're really worried about sensitivity, you can throw some 30-pound braid on a rod and run that, and it will up that sensitivity just a little bit. My normal combo with this rod, I either run a Metanium 70 DC with 15-pound Tatsu, 14-pound Shimano Mastiff. I also ran it for quite a while with 30-pound X8 braid, the Daiwa braid, and I absolutely love it. I can't think of a single thing. Well, there's two things. This rod is not a giant swim bait rod. However, I did absolutely throw mag draft freestyles on this rod and got away with it. I wouldn't recommend it because it's a little overpowered, but it will take that 1 ounce weight absolutely beautifully. And it's not a BFS rod, but that's not to say you can't throw 1/4 ounce micro jigs with it, 1/4 ounce swim bait heads with like a 3-inch swimmer, Jackal Bling 55, Spro rock crawlers, bigger stuff, DT8s, DT10s. You can get away with all of that kind of stuff on this rod, unless you're just going absolutely berserker on size to the...
All right, y'all, I hope you liked our little buyer's guide here in our utility rods. We'll probably do a couple more of these moving on in the spinning categories, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe, follow Adam the Tackle Weeb. We'll be linking him down in the description there, and we'll see you next time. Lake Pro Tackle. See you guys.
Take it easy.